In a time and place when you can work from anywhere.
Two ladies in their mid to late 27s have decided to.
And they're calling it workationing.
The ladies are trying to live as intentionally as possible.
Apparently that means lots of long walks and long conversations.
Here's what they've learned about escaping from shitty situations.
This is the Workationing Podcast. How do your quads feel?
Shivery.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Those stairs.
Yeah.
Were a real challenge. Wasn't expecting that.
No. So we have been getting our steps in here in Montreal.
With a little side of maybe some P90X.
Yeah.
You know?
It's great. You're going to love it.
Try that. It makes you hurt.
All over.
It makes you... not the stairs. I was worried. I used the handrail. Happy to have that.
Yeah. It's like you go to pee and you just... You know, you kind of drop onto the toilet. There's not really a mid-range of motion there.
Very, very true. But we've been getting our 10,000 steps in every single day.
We have. That's been a cool thing here in Montreal. I really like our neighborhood. It's a little bit cracky from time to time, but for the most part, it's a very nice place to walk around.
Mm-hmm. There's a track right by our Airbnb.
Yep, walk around that a few times. You get yourself your 10,000 steps.
Mm-hmm. There are people playing soccer. There's a water park there. It's just a nice little part of town. But we do a lot of walking and talking lately because it takes a long time to get those 10,000 steps in.
It really does. It's just very many steps. So 5 miles a day we're doing, and we're doing it mostly together. So we have been having just lots and lots of conversations.
Yes. This fitness takes a lot of time.
It really, really does. But something that we've been talking about a lot is we talked about it a little bit on the last episode, and we wanted to talk about it a little more here, is the escape room that we went to for my birthday really got the gears turning for your gringas.
It did. It did. And we were thinking about feeling trapped because I don't do trapped very well.
No, you really don't. Like, I don't think anyone loves that sensation. As soon as Kari orders an entree, she gets like 3 bites in and she's going to need the check because she just needs to know that she can go.
Yes.
When it's time.
Yes. It really bothers me. If I'm sitting at a restaurant, this sense of feeling trapped manifests itself in all kinds of ways. Being stuck in traffic and you can't go anywhere.
Right.
And it's hot outside maybe. And are you going to run out of gas? I don't know, but I've got somewhere to go, but I'm trapped here on this bridge. And what if the bridge collapses?
Right.
I also have sort of a thing that I like to do where I think of every possible way that I could die.
Yeah. I mean, because when you got time on your hands and you're feeling a little trapped, what better way to spend that time than to just catastrophize?
I'm very good at that. Have you ever seen anybody do it better?
No, it's a real gift.
But feeling trapped is a real bitch.
It really is. It really is. And being in that escape room, feeling trapped, it was a fun kind of trapped.
It was.
I knew I could get out. I wasn't too worried about it. But there was that clock was ticking down.
Yeah. We had an hour.
You have a certain amount of time and you're stuck.
Yes, and also figure it out. I wasn't sure when it was going to end. We didn't know how many rooms there were in this escape room because you have to proceed from one to the next to the next and the next. And there were some doors we didn't even need to use.
Right, and so it's hard to know. Am I on track with this? I mean, I know the time. I know how much time I have left. Is 20 minutes going to do it? I don't know.
I don't know either. Do I need a clue? And it's extra hard when you don't know exactly where the finish line is. Or what done looks like.
Right.
And I think that can make the sense of feeling trapped carry even more anxiety along with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we started really talking about the ways that we've felt trapped in our lives and the ways that we see other people feeling trapped as well. And it's actually, once you start looking for it, it's kind of everywhere.
Yes. Yeah, I would say that.
I know when I was growing up, I think I might have even talked about this on the podcast before. My dad would always ask me, like, what's the strongest force in the universe? And the answer was habit. Mm-hmm. And I think about that all the time now because I just think that there's so many ways that people feel trapped. And a lot of it's almost like, you know, like you see people, they have like a puppy. And to keep the puppy out of the kitchen, they'll like put just like a small board across the door because the puppy can't get over it. And then the puppy turns into a dog and it's a big dog, but then it thinks it can't get over like a small barrier.
Right.
I think that like a lot of people being stuck is stuff like that. Mm-hmm. You think you're more stuck than you are.
I think that that's true. But to get unstuck requires making some pretty significant changes sometimes.
Yeah, and it's scary as hell. I mean, you look back at our earliest episodes and it's just us like having a complete meltdown because we had decided to do this and we wanted to do this. We had all kinds of escape routes. We had plenty of money to do it. We had budgeted it all out. And if things didn't go well, girl, you can really just get on a plane and go home.
Right.
And we were freaking out, but doing something so different, you're wired to fear it. And
the unknown.
And it's not rational.
No, especially considering how well we planned it out.
Right.
Minus the destinations.
Yeah, well, listen,
just details.
We're working on it. But anyways, there's lots of ways that people can feel trapped. You can feel trapped in a relationship.
I see a lot of that. I've been there myself.
Yeah.
A time or two.
You really put in the time with a relationship. Mm-hmm. And it's, oh, God, it's hell out here on these streets being a single person trying to date.
Oh, it's rough. I see a lot of my friends really struggling with the dating scene.
Yeah. Listen, I'm not particularly enjoying it. It's not the best time I've ever had.
No, I'm kind of just opting out.
Yeah.
Over here.
Yeah. So but you can be in just a real shit relationship and just stay there. Or even not even a shit relationship. I think it's almost easier to get trapped in a relationship that's generally good, but that isn't going in the direction that you want to go.
Right. That's where I was at before I came on workationing. And it was the best relationship I'd ever had. We'd been together for about 3 years and we lived together. And I admired him so much because he had created a life that he really wanted, and he had engineered it from the ground up to the point where he got his PhD and really specialized and is doing all of these cool things. And he bought a house that's the exact house that he wants to die in, and he is decorating the inside of his coffin, but that's his coffin and not mine. And at what point, what do I want?
Right.
And it turns out it's not to live permanently in the middle of nowhere, New Hampshire.
Right. But it's really easy to get stuck in a relationship that's like mostly good. Because first of all, you know how hard it is to find a good one.
It's true.
And then when you find a good one, but the problem is if there's like just a real deal breaker, having to fundamentally compromise how you want to live your life.
Right.
To be with somebody, it doesn't really matter how great they are or how good that relationship is. But it's really easy to stay in there when there's just that one thing that's wrong. Mm-hmm. You just kind of not look at it. Mm-hmm. But it's not going anywhere.
No, and then at what point do you wake up and realize, like, this is not where I want to live? And then what do I do about that?
Right.
And getting out of that otherwise really good relationship was just, it's tough to pull that trigger.
It's brutal, especially when you get back out here and you see what the inventory looks like.
Jesus.
It's really hard. You start to realize as you get older, like how rare those like really true connections are.
Mm-hmm. I set up an OkCupid profile. I've heard that you'd had some success over there. So I was just like, well, let me see what this looks like.
I've also had just a lot of horrors,
Oh my God, with the first messages.
It's just very rough.
A lot of people like to quote Aziz Ansari, I found out.
Yeah. Going to Whole Foods. Can I get you anything?
It made me laugh the first time I heard that.
Yeah, but then when you start getting it from a lot of people, it's like, are you guys in a club or something? I had to Google that.
Exactly. And then I found out, oh, you just stole that.
Just unoriginal AF out here.
Okay. But then I also see people get stuck in jobs and careers.
Yeah, I think that happens a lot. I think debt has a lot to do with that. Sometimes you go and you get this degree and then you get into the career and it's like you put all these years into it and then all of this money and then it turns out you don't actually like this career.
Mm-hmm. That's rough.
Right. Or maybe you thought you were going to get a job that was, X job, but when you got out into the market, it was like, well, you kind of had to settle for this other thing. And now you're just sort of in that. That's your career track.
I see that with teachers a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of new teachers. It's apparently very difficult to get a teaching job. You think about it, they're not really building too many new schools. They're just packing more kids into the existing ones.
Right.
It looks like. So to get a teaching job, you're basically replacing the ones who are retiring, but there are more teachers or would-be teachers coming out of school than there are retiring. Getting into that union, you've got to know somebody.
Right.
And then you end up in this substitute teaching track. And I know so many people who are in that substitute teaching track. They don't have benefits. They don't have guaranteed work hours. They get paid really poorly. They're dealing with asshole kids every day. It's not a good life.
Right.
But they've got a degree in education, and what else do you do with that?
Well, and I see it so much. I mean, I know a ton of people in like marketing and that sort of thing. I see it a ton in our industry even. I see it just in general. I think that people get into a career and for the first time you're making like real money, you know, enough money that you're not living paycheck to paycheck, enough money that, you know, maybe you can get a house or you can get that new lease. And all of a sudden, those basic needs are met, and maybe you hate your job. Maybe you just really fucking hate it. But it's going to take so much effort to change course. And I think people just kind of are like, well, you know, but I've got this house and it's pretty okay. And I see my friends on the weekend. But 40 hours a week plus commute is just a real lot of time.
That's a lot of your life.
Yeah, to be doing shit that you really hate. And I really think that I see that wear people down over time.
Or aren't passionate about.
Right.
Not even hate. If you're just iffy about it, maybe find something else to do, because this is really a huge chunk of your life.
Yeah.
And it's not just your livelihood, it's kind of your area of expertise, right? Don't you want to be the best at what you do?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so how do you rise in that if you're not passionate about it? How do you muster up the energy to stay sharp on your skills and tactics and what's new in the industry and all of that stuff if you don't really give a fuck?
Right. And how does it shape your sense of self over time when you really don't like what you do and you don't really care about it that much and you know you're mediocre at it? You know, what is it like to spend 40 hours a week just checking the boxes, like just getting by, just doing the bare minimum? What does that do to your sense of self?
I know some people, though, who actually take jobs where they do the bare minimum. The job itself is kind of a bare minimum,
right,
to get by, because it requires so little of their mental energy, which they prefer to save to work on other projects. And sometimes they do work on those other projects.
But at least that's an intentional choice.
That is an intentional choice.
You know, and they're putting that effort other places. And if you're just trying to get a check and that's cool with you, and you've got this other thing over here that you're passionate about, I think that's a very legitimate path.
Right.
I think people get stuck in geographic locations.
I think that's probably mostly because of family, though, right?
Yeah. I mean, for me, that was definitely the case. I was living in Akron, Ohio. I've lived a few other places, but never for very long. Akron has this weird gravity for me, but it's because I have friends that I've been friends with for 20 years there. And my mom is there and my family is there. And it's just an easy place to land for me. But the reality is that I've never really been happy in Akron. There are things that I really want out of my life that I can't have there because they don't exist there. And it's always been an unhealthy place for me. It's always been a place where I've gone and I have gained weight and not really worked on myself and, you know, probably spent too much money on stuff I shouldn't have been spending money on, going out too much, buying too many things just because I was trying to feel better generally about my life.
Right.
And even though I know that about Akron and I know that, I still end up there all the time because it's just weirdly easy. So I think that happens a lot.
One of the best things that I ever did for myself was leave the very small town in Northern California where I grew up. Literally, I was a member of the Future Farmers of America.
Just look at you. Feeling a failed farmer.
Could you imagine? No, I used to really wake up and feed chickens every other day. Kyle and I would split those duties. Oh, brother. But the best thing I ever did was go across the country for college.
Yeah.
I purposefully made it difficult for myself to go back. And I would go back once a year. And that was it. And then I moved again from Pittsburgh to New Hampshire. And that was also a good move for me. I have found it to be hugely beneficial to occasionally just really shake up my environment.
Yeah, and I can totally see that. It's been good for me whenever I've done it. And I think I've had to commit to myself through this process to I can't live in Akron anymore. It's never been a good spot for me. It's not a terrible place. I love so many things about Akron, but it's not a good place for me. And it sucks because there are all kinds of people that I love there, but I can't live there. It's not good for me. You know? I deserve better than that, than to be someplace that makes me miserable.
Yeah. Makes you feel trapped.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think people get trapped financially quite a bit. It
Yes.
doesn't help all us millennials, graduating or not, with debt.
Right. Just a lot of debt. I see people also getting into trouble financially because they feel like, okay, I'm in my mid to late 27s. It's time to buy a house. It's time to, I need this certain car. I need, people overextending themselves beyond what is feasible or what even just really makes sense for them. What's going to serve them best in terms of the lifestyle that they actually want to have.
Right.
And maybe you're in this career that you don't really like, but now you've bought this giant ass house. And that mortgage payment is a coming. And so suddenly you're really limited in the directions that you're able to move in that career because you can't take a step back and start over because this mortgage payment's coming due. Mm-hmm. You kind of have to stay where you are. So I think people being non-strategic, taking on debt in a not very strategic way or without having all the information, I see people get trapped that way all the time.
It's very expensive to sell a house. You have to really stay in that house long enough to make the realtor's fees worth it unless the real estate in your area really shoots up.
Right. And there's not a lot of that going on right now.
No, I haven't seen too much of it.
It used to be that people would talk about buying a house as an investment, but I don't think it is anymore. At least you can't count on a house being an investment. If you want that house and you really want to live there, then I think you just do that. And I don't think you can count on that being more money later. It could be less money.
Yes. And that roof is going to need to be replaced.
Right.
And I know way too much about roof warranties.
Right.
On account of some of the work that we do.
Right.
They are not what you think that they are. They are prorated. If the labor is only good for a year, do you know how much the labor is on a roof? A lot. Do you have that in savings? Because I just saw an article that most Americans don't even have like $3,500 in savings.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, people get that. You're very trapped. If you have less than $3,500 in the bank, that makes me nervous. Just the idea of it. Right. That's scary because you are just one minor disaster away from just real financial problems.
Oh, yeah. Do you not have health insurance? Because that $3,500 is not going to go very far if you break an arm. Need to have surgery.
Yeah, your AC goes out, something.
ACL?
Yeah.
Oh, your air conditioning?
Either. AC, ACL.
All of it. HVAC, not cheap, I don't think.
Right. Any of that. Not that there's anything wrong with buying a house, but you got to know you have to know that that's what you really want. You have to really thought that through, and you have to really have the finances to back that up to do it in a safe way that's going to be sustainable for you.
And you probably want to stay there for a while.
Yeah.
But if you don't and you already have this house, it's easy to feel trapped.
Absolutely. I think you can feel trapped just in your body. I really struggled with this weight thing for a long fucking time. And it really felt like something that I could not get a hold of. I'm a really hard worker. There's all kinds of stuff that I can do and make happen. But for some reason, that was the one thing that I couldn't quite get a handle on.
Right.
And I'm out here. I'm down 60 pounds in 5 months.
Right. You're killing it.
Just killing it. And it feels really effortless. But it's because I think a lot of it's that you get trapped by your habits.
Yes.
I was trapped in my context. And I was also really unhappy. And I was looking for ways to check out of that. And going out to dinner, going out for drinks, that kind of stuff, I think makes it gives you a nice little escape hatch for a minute.
Yes.
You can feel like a little sense of relief. It's not going to actually fix anything. It's going to just only add to those problems. But for that night, you're like, yes, so much better. I don't want to die right now.
No, this is a great dinner. I love a great meal out.
Right. We both do.
It's very true.
We both do. And it turns out you can still enjoy that and take care of your body. And I'm learning to find balance. But what I'm beginning to realize is a lot of that for me was a response to how trapped I felt. And it created a whole other way for me to be trapped. The way that when you start to get trapped, I feel like it snowballs.
Yes. And you stop making progress in other areas as well, I think.
Yeah.
I think that traveling and this whole workationing progress has made me realize the ways in which I felt trapped before I came out here. I didn't start workationing because I felt trapped. I did it because I have this job that enables me to work from anywhere. I don't understand why I was spending so much time at home all the time when I could be seeing cool things. I love to travel. I love to do weird things. I love to try weird foods. I like to see cool people. I like to peep what's going on in all kinds of different places, and I just wasn't doing enough of that. And I had strategically engineered, speaking of like strategically engineering your life, I have been working this out for myself for the past several years. This was not a quick like switch for me.
Right.
and I'd been planning it out, and I just wasn't taking that final jump. And part of it was that I didn't have anybody to go with. Found that in you. But for me, it's about enhancing and optimizing my life experience and being able to do as many things as I can before I die, and being very intentional about my time. When I started being very intentional about my time, I started seeing all of the ways I wasn't intentional about my time before. And I kind of had to have some harsh conversations with myself, and I wasn't I wasn't failing, but I wasn't being the best version of myself. And what I have really committed to on this workationing process is trying to identify the ways in which I can do better, and then not just saying, oh, I could probably do better there. Like, how about I just go do better there?
Right. Because so much of it is, I think I've consciously felt more trapped than you did. Mm-hmm. And I was really looking for an escape hatch. I was very unhealthy, and I was back in Akron, which I had like just sworn to myself I wouldn't do. And it was 4 years later, and I was still there. Mm-hmm. And I was just feeling, I didn't really know which direction to move in. And I was looking for something radical because I could sort of see in myself that I had backed myself into a corner in a couple different ways. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't really sure how to get out of it. But I felt like I really needed a dramatic change of context just to shake myself up, because I knew I was capable of making the change, but I was really, really afraid that I wasn't going to be able to do it where I was.
Right.
And so that became really, really important to me. And I'm so glad that I did it, because my instinct on that was 100% right. I think that there were a lot of people in my life who were like, I hear what you're saying about this stuff, but I don't know that this is the solution. But I really felt in my gut that it was, and I was right. Because just the act of getting on that plane, even though I was so scared and I was so nervous about how this was all going to go, putting all of my stuff into storage, figuring all of that out, it was all really scary. But then once I did it, I was like, oh, I can just do this. These things that feel so inevitable and permanent to me, in the way that like my hometown started to feel just like inevitable and permanent to me, are not. I am not ever as trapped as I think I am.
Right. You have the power to change your circumstances in really whatever ways you want. What's holding you back?
Yeah, something that Kari and I have been talking a lot about on these long walks of ours is that, for me, has been a really transformational realization that I've had while I've been here, which is that when I think about something, like, for instance, let's talk about the weight loss thing, that always felt like something I really couldn't change. But it's because I'm realizing it was my mentality. I was like, man, I really hope I can lose this weight. I really hope this diet works out. Because I'm already introducing the possibility of failure.
Right.
But there are some things where you're not going to always have the most control. You probably have more control than you think, but with your job or your career or something like that, you might not have the full control that you want to have. But when it comes to my body and losing weight, it's complicated. It's a real son of a bitch. I can do that. It's all within my control. And so what is this part of my head that's like, oh, what if I fail? How? How would I fail if I just decided to do it?
Right.
And so you can't introduce to yourself the idea that you can't. And where does this come from in my mind that I'm going to let myself down? How? Why would I let myself down?
What does your brother say about the frogs on a log?
Oh, yeah. So my brother always loves to tell the story of there's 3 frogs on a log. One decides to jump off. How many are still on the log? And it's 3, because deciding to jump off the log doesn't do shit.
You've got to jump off that log.
You've got to just actually jump off the log. So every time I decided, I'm really going to lose the weight this time, starting tomorrow, Right. There were a lot of tomorrows.
Yes.
There was like 10 years of tomorrows. You're either doing it or not. Yoda shit. Do or do not. There is no try.
It's very true.
And that's been a huge realization that I have been able to have, and it really has been transformative.
That kind of even ties into what everyone would say at the Sky Palace when we were staying in New Hampshire. It would be like, have a nice time at yoga if you want to. Right. It'd always be like ... if you want to.
Right.
And there's a whole lot of if you want to's that you have complete control over. And if you just choose to want and then act on the things that are going to help you get toward your goals, and do that as a matter of habit on a consistent basis, then eventually you're going to be a lot closer to your goals, if not already at them, at accomplishing them.
Yeah.
And good things happen in the meantime.
Right. Sometimes it's just a slog. But as long as you get up every day and you take those steps forward, and in this case, like literal steps.
Right. 10,000 a day.
10,000 a day. You're going to get where you're going, even if it's imperfect, even if you fuck up sometimes. But it's just the slogging through every day.
I think I see people not getting out because they get distracted, and I think they purposefully distract themselves, and then that becomes a habit.
Yeah. I know for me that was a big problem. I think about just the amount of television that I used to watch.
Yes.
That's just a huge time suck.
Mm-hmm.
And for what? Like what? That's completely non-productive.
It is. Unless you want to have something to talk about at the water cooler.
Right. And so it was kind of an escape, but it was also taking up all of my extra time.
Yeah, there's value in entertainment, but I think that it needs to be had in moderation. It may be different types of entertainment besides just TV. But people seriously park themselves in front of the TV for 3 hours a night. More than that.
And what else could you be doing with that time? Maybe getting yourself unstuck from some things.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe making your life more fun.
Mm-hmm.
And the more fun my life gets, the less interested I am in television. Listen, I still love me some TV, though.
Right, me too. You know,
I'm watching less television I've ever watched in my life. I maybe watch an hour a week right now.
We have to split movies into two. We're just too tired by the end of it. Like, maybe let's pick this one up tomorrow.
Yeah, we're very elderly in that way. But you also see it with alcohol.
Yes.
That's a real good escape hatch. It's just make this nice for a minute.
Especially for ladies.
Yeah. I see it with a lot of people. I see it with men. I see it with women. I see it in a lot of different ways. But that's a big go-to, and it's really socially acceptable.
Mm-hmm. You can talk about it. You can post about it on social media.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. And I think that's a problem.
I think that's just becoming part of American culture, because you see as we travel that people don't really drink like Americans do in any other place that I've ever been to.
Right. And the food thing, I think people can really use food as a way to escape.
Mm-hmm.
You know you're not supposed to be eating this trash, but if your day has just been one long miserable slog, and then it makes it a lot easier to be like, well, I deserve this, whatever. You
Taco
know?
Bell.
Yeah.
Nachos Grande.
I've earned it.
Yes.
You
don't need that neon cheese. It's not serving you in the long run, but it's really easy to trigger those dopamine releases
right
in any way you can when you're just feeling so shitty. But that's not the way that's a poor way to escape. You're not going to escape your problems or any terrible situation by losing yourself in those types of distractions. And I could have done better at it before workationing. That's something that I'm still, sometimes we have some nachos. God, we love it.
We do love nachos, and you don't have to say goodbye to them forever, but you gotta have some balance, girl.
I know, and we're learning what that is, and we're seeing the results of that progress. I mean, I'm down 15 pounds. That's great.
I think that this idea about dopamine has been really transformative for me. I think I alluded to it in one of the past episodes that right before I said goodbye to Jacques in Medellin, we had a conversation that was really important to me. And something that he said to me was that when you're making these big changes in your life and you're trying to move in a more positive direction, the dopamine is like a really huge part of that. That you it's easier to do things like drink less and eat better and not watch so much TV and stay focused throughout the day and that sort of thing when you're getting your dopamine from other places. If you're getting if all of your dopamine supply, because you need that.
Right.
If all of your dopamine supply is coming from things that are ultimately destructive, it's going to be really hard to give those things up even if they are really destructive. So you kind of need to find a more positive place to get your dopamine, and that can be things like travel is great. Like novelty in and of itself creates dopamine. That releases dopamine in your brain. You can also do things like yoga. Turns out that's fucking great at creating dopamine.
Very true.
Things that are more, and when you start getting your dopamine from other places, it's suddenly easier to give up that other stuff that wasn't serving you.
Right. Your mind's more occupied with the cooler, better stuff for you. And you just need to train your brain to go for that type of dopamine instead of the neon cheese out of a canned kind.
Right, because it turns out your brain doesn't actually care between the difference. So much of it's you have to train yourself. Like you have to adjust your habits. You have to create new habits so that you go to the dopamine over here instead of the dopamine over there.
Right. So I think that we've also talked about the value of friends and feedback a lot.
Yeah.
On our walks. Because if you're feeling trapped, you might not even realize how trapped you are. And then you might start making self-destructive decisions in a subconscious effort to weasel your way out of that trap situation.
Right.
And I think that it's nice to have some friends who can call you out on that. But how many friends do we have who drink too much? And when's the last time you said, hey, I'm worried about your drinking?
Just never, because then somebody might say it to me.
It's an awkward conversation.
It is very awkward. I'm realizing how much those conversations weren't happening in my friendships. I wasn't having them with people, and people weren't having them with me. And I don't think that it's that no one knew that I was struggling. Mm-hmm. And it's certainly not that I didn't have any friends who I saw struggling. But there's almost, when everybody's feeling trapped and nobody really knows how to fix it, there's almost like this silent pact that we're just not going to talk about it.
Right.
And I think that can be really, in that way, your friendships can turn really unhealthy really quickly. And it's not good for anybody.
Also with weight gain.
That's a hard one. That's a hard one to bring up to somebody. No one ever really talked to me about it, ever. And I can understand why. And honestly, I probably would not have appreciated them coming at me with that. I was not in the right headspace. I wasn't able, because at the time it felt like something that I couldn't fix. If someone had come to me with that, I think it would have felt really like an attack. Mm-hmm. How dare you?
Right.
What, I'm not good enough in this way. You know, like you need me to be skinny for some reason. Why do you care? Why does it matter? I think I would have been really fucking defensive. But I'm sure that there were a lot of people who were like, damn, girl.
Oh, because they were talking about it behind your back.
I'm sure that they were. I don't even necessarily think in a malicious way.
I have some boozy friends that everyone just says, wow, that person's a real boozer. And I'm like, well, who's going to talk to this one about it?
Right. As soon as they leave the room, everyone says it, but nobody's going to say it to that person. And it can even be coming from a place of non-cuntiness.
Right.
You know, it can be coming from a place of just genuine concern.
Right.
But nobody wants to say it because it's a tough conversation. I think I'm still trying to figure that out, because if people really aren't open to it, I don't know what you do. And you don't want to be hurtful to somebody. You don't want them to feel like you're judging them. Mm-hmm. But I don't really know how to address that. I'm still working on it. But I know that for myself, I really want to have, and I know you do too, relationships where I am honest with people and where they are honest with me. I want to be friends with people who are engaged in like active self-improvement on an ongoing basis and who are looking for that accountability.
I really like this whole self-improvement thing that we've been on. I've seen it make tangible, positive results in both of our lives. I know other people who are really on the self-improvement grind, and I see the changes that it's making in their lives. And I think that focusing on self-improvement and always recognizing that there are ways that you can improve, and how can you do that, and in which ways do you want to improve, and how is that going to serve you better, maintaining a focus on that is really important. And it's something that is basically required in my friendships moving forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I hope that I can incorporate it more into the friendships that I have already established.
And listen, we're going to suck at it sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% over here.
No, I'm no guru. I'm just really slogging through trying to figure out how to not be a piece of shit.
I think it starts with more P90X.
God damn it.
I give you the P90X yoga. Little yoga lattes, or what's it called?
Pio.
Yoga
lattes. It's the same basic concept. It's like, let's take both yoga and Pilates and then just drain them of anything that you might have enjoyed about those things.
Yeah, you're going to be moving a lot. They say add movement.
Just very high intensity.
Would you like to squat some more? Just bend down into that lunge deeper and up, and then deeper and up.
Just treat yourself to a deep lunge.
Yes.
Feel that burn, Gringa.
Sometimes we really indulge and we do 2 videos.
Treat yourself.
But then some days we skip because my legs don't work anymore.
Yeah. No, it's not about perfection. It's about progress.
But we have been hitting those 10,000 steps every single day.
We have been. It's been awesome. And it's really fun. We did it. We started out doing it for 10 days and then we did it for longer than that. Now it's just an everyday thing. But that 10 days was cool because it was like, ooh, we walked 50 miles.
We did.
That was cool.
We walked more than 50 miles in 10 days. Some days I did 7 miles.
Right. And so that was really fun. And we had lots of great conversations.
So habits are really important, obviously. But I think that there are some other harsh truths about escaping trap situations that you feel trapped in.
Yeah. I think, once again, we're still working on this, but I think we're starting to see that there's patterns of what you need to do to get out of just generally shitty situations that you don't want to be in.
Because the first step is recognizing that you're trapped. The second step is in gaining some perspective on how trapped you are. Exactly how trapped are you?
Right.
What's it going to take? And you got to start mapping that out. But I think the first thing that you need to realize is that just like in our escape room scenario, there is a ticking clock. You don't know when it's going to go off.
Yeah, I always think of this story that my dad... I love telling dad stories. My dad and I would always butt heads when I was growing up, and I was always just like, shut up, dude. But it's so funny how many of his stories have become like these kind of touchstones for me in this process. It's like a really fun way that he's been with me through this. So my dad was 30 and he had an associate's degree, and he was working as a nurse on a psych unit. And one of the doctors there was like, hey, you're really good and you're smart and you're talented and you seem to really be passionate about this. Why don't you consider going to medical school? And my dad was just like, no, because, he'd have to go back and get a bachelor's first. Mm-hmm. And then he'd have to go to medical school and then residency and all that. He's like, it's going to be more than 10 years until I'm a doctor. And that doctor said to him, well, those 10 years are going to pass either way. Do you want to be a doctor at the end, or do you still want to be doing this? And I think about that all the time with the ticking clock. You got to just start.
And your dad did become a doctor.
He did. He went back to school after that conversation, and he did become a doctor. And, that was probably a long 10 years, but those 10 years passed and they would have anyways.
So where do you want to be in 10 years?
Right. And I think so much of taking that first step is accepting sunk costs.
Yes.
Because I think that people talk about the sunk cost fallacy is one of the most well-known logical fallacies. Mm-hmm. And there's a reason for that. It's that you put in so much time or energy or money into going in one direction in your life, and then switching it up, it feels like you're going to lose that either way. That's a sunk cost. That's already gone.
Right.
And so what are you going to do? Just keep throwing your time and your money down that hole after the other stuff you already lost, or are you going to redirect somewhere else?
In order to do that, you have to be willing to let things go. And that can be any number of things. That can be a relationship. That could be a job history. If you're switching careers, especially if you're switching industries, all of a sudden your resume becomes totally irrelevant. And if you want to make that jump, then you're going to have to start by getting some things that you can tack onto that resume. Have a really good story for why you're switching industries.
Right.
It's because it's your passion. I think employers would like to hear that.
Yeah.
That's understandable.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing this. I wasn't passionate about it. I want to be the best at this. I'm interested in becoming the best at this.
Right.
But you've got to be willing to let stuff go.
Yeah. Early on, all the way back in Aguada, we added a fifth rule to vacationing, which is that you shouldn't be afraid to change your mind, and you shouldn't look at it as a personal failure if you do.
Right.
And I think that has been so critical to everything that's happened after that, is that mindset. Because you have to be willing to you have to be willing to think differently. You have to be willing to look at something, and if it's not right, admit that it's not right.
Right.
And in doing that, not beat yourself up, because you can't know what you don't know. And there's so many major life decisions that you make, especially in your 20s, when you just really don't know shit and you don't have the experience and you've never been there before, and you make some kind of a decision, or you have some kind of a belief or whatever, and as you grow and learn and evolve, the evidence shows that was the wrong decision or the wrong thought. And you have to be willing to let it go and not judge yourself for having had that. It's all just part of your development.
Right. When did you get on this path that you're currently on? For a lot of people, they get into it right after college, or even before that, when they major in something specific in college. And then all of a sudden, the rest of your life is dictated by a decision that you made at 18 or 22. And I think it's okay to accept that you really maybe didn't know everything that you might want at 18 or 22. I know that what I wanted when I was 24 is a lot different than what I wanted at 30.
Right.
27.
Right. And I think that being compassionate with yourself is so important to the ability to change, because facing these things about yourself, being honest with yourself, saying, man, I really need to lose some serious lbs, or God, I don't think this marriage is going to work out. Or gosh, this really isn't the job that I had envisioned for myself, and I'm not happy. Having those realizations it's not fun. Let me tell you. And I think that people can really take themselves out with just like self-loathing and regret. And you've got to forgive yourself. You've got to have compassion for yourself and understand that like you did the best that you could at the time, but you're older and wiser now and you're going to do better. So I think with that self-honesty and self-reflection, there just has to be a lot of compassion. And I would also say, to go back what we were talking about before in finding that feedback from friends, I think that that's the kind of feedback that you want to demand from your friends. Honest, but compassionate. Because there's a big difference between being honest with somebody and tearing somebody down.
Right.
And so you need to be with people who see you for what you are and respect you and want the best for you. And don't confuse the honesty.
Yeah, because I mean, the honest feedback is difficult to give sometimes. And it's really difficult to tell somebody something that they don't want to hear without sounding like an asshole.
Right. But you also, when you're going through these big changes, you need the honesty, but you also need the compassion from yourself and from the people around you, because this is hard work. Especially in the case of a divorce. Yeah.
I think that all of my friends recognized, on both sides, families. I think everyone recognized that when my ex-husband and I decided to get divorced, that it was a good decision for everyone involved. And it was an amicable divorce. It was a decent relationship. There was not a lot of fighting going on. It's just, we were moving in different directions.
Right.
And my friends really helped me see that.
Yeah.
Because they saw how unhappy that I was. And, are you going to stay like this? Are things going to change? Well, you've been in this cycle for 3 years now, and you don't seem any happier in that. So how about you change it? And then we did the counseling thing, and it takes it takes a long time to break up with somebody. Even if you're just dating them, I find it takes me a while from the time that I'm like,
just a whole fun process.
It is. From like when the realization from the execution.
Yeah, it usually takes me, and I've gotten better over time, but it still takes me about, I think, 6 months from the like, this is not going to work realization to actually completely extricating myself.
Because you've got to be sure about it.
Yeah, well, but I think it's that sunk cost fallacy again.
Yeah.
You've put so much energy into this, and it's hard out there on those streets, those dating streets.
You've already met their families.
Yeah,
It's the devil you've
like bought stuff together. Just, it's a real pain in the ass to go through all that, and it hurts.
Mm-hmm.
Even when it's the right thing, even when you get to the point that you hate that dude, it still hurts. You're gonna have to go through that. That sucks.
But hasn't it always been better on the other side?
It's always better, and I've never ever gotten through a breakup and been like, oh, I did that in the right amount of time. I'm always like, God, I just should have really just ripped that Band-Aid off.
It's true.
Would have been better for everybody.
And I would say that a lot of the most difficult decisions that I've really agonized over, including the workationing thing, putting my stuff in storage, giving away my cat,
right,
selling my car, figuring out what to do with the other one. It was a lot.
Yeah.
Ending a relationship, it was a lot packed into 2 months of hell. And the whole time I was just like, is this what a downward spiral looks like?
Right.
Is that where I am right now?
Yeah, those are definitely the late night phone calls we were having.
Does it look like I'm spiraling right now?
Right.
And my friends were like, I don't know.
I can't tell.
Can't tell right now.
No, because we were doing something so different than what most people do. I think they couldn't. They didn't know. I didn't know.
No.
They're like, I can't tell. It's like, me neither.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Call me in Puerto Rico. We'll see where you're at. But you can always come back.
Right.
That was something that we could come back from. But once we got to Puerto Rico, that first day, it was just, oh, this is way better than I thought.
Right.
And look at what I can do. Turns out anything I want.
Yeah.
And you can do anything that you want too. And it's just about figuring out what you want and then mapping out how you're going to get there.
Yeah, that's so critical. So you first have to admit it, right? You've got to go through all these steps that we're talking about in terms of like looking at it and dealing with it, being compassionate with yourself. And then you've just got to make a plan.
Well, you have to figure out what's working, what isn't working, and what's not working, or what don't you like, and then what are you going to replace that with? Like, what would you rather have instead?
Yeah, what do you want? What do you want? And then you've got to just look at where you are Take a real honest look.
It's not going to be fun.
Really fun. You're going to love it. At where you are.
Yeah, and how old you are.
And the resources you have. Mm-hmm. And then you plot a course. How do you get there? You need to be really realistic about that. How long is that going to take? What is that going to look like? What are you going to have to give up? Probably something.
Yeah, none of it's free. None of it's free.
So what's it going to take? And then you just make that plan. And you break it down into steps. First, I'm going to do this. Then I'm going to do this. And you just start walking.
And you maybe build in some exit plans too. So if A doesn't work out, then I've got plan B over here that's still going to help me get to that goal. And so if at any point you hit a failure, you don't again feel trapped and like there's no other move, because there are always other moves.
Always.
God, feeling trapped is a real bitch.
It really is. I love the way that we map out our plan. We use Post-its.
We do? Oh, yes. We have multicolored, very neon Post-its.
Yes.
And we like to put them up on windows over a view. We have posted photos of this on Facebook, and you can scroll through, find them. But our views in Medellin were sick.
Yeah.
And we just jacked them up with a bunch of Post-its, because as you're planning your future, you've got this killer view over the city, and that's what we like to do. You can also just use a wall.
Yeah.
And then you just kind of mind map, spider graph it out. And here's step A. And here's step B. And here's how I'm going to get to that. And here are the connections that I need to make, or the
steps you have to take.
Steps you have to take, exactly.
What's your to-do list? Put your to-do list on neon Post-its and put it right in your line of vision. Look at that every single day. It feels so good to take down a Post-it.
Yeah, to slay a Post-it and throw it in the trash.
Trash it. Feels really good. Mm-hmm. You can see the progress that you're making. You can see what steps are coming up. I think it really helps with that ticking clock thing. Am I on track? And it really is helpful. It sounds like it won't be, but there is a huge difference between having a vague outline of what you need to do in your head and having a concrete outline of exactly what you need to do in a very visible place.
And then actively taking steps to knock out those tasks. And then you can do whatever you want, really.
Yeah, and then you're making progress, even if it's not perfect, even if things don't go exactly the way you want them to, because like really, when do they? Mm-hmm. At least you're making serious, concrete progress, and you're putting your energy toward things that are going to get you more of what you want and less of what you don't.
I don't think that there's anything that like really living intentionally and taking those steps every single day can't do. We talk about how Jim Carrey wrote himself a check for like $10 million.
Yeah.
When he was really poor and sleeping in tents.
Uh-huh.
And he Post-dated it for 5 years, and then he actually cashed that check.
Yeah.
I don't know if he used our Post-it method, but I'm sure he was living very intentionally during that time.
Yeah, you've got to have a plan. Big changes don't happen by accident. It's hard. And you've got to have a plan, and you've got to just keep slogging every day.
I think that this works for people who want to become digital nomads. You can really plot out a course to get a remote job if you don't already have one. And then once you have that, the rest is just putting your stuff into storage and picking a destination.
Yeah.
It can be used for relationships.
Mm-hmm. For your career.
Yeah.
For weight loss.
Mm-hmm.
Any of these things. I mean, I have Post-its for literally everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so important to do that, because you know what? I don't just know that I'm going to lose this weight. I know how much weight I'm going to lose and by when. And you know what? I'm still on track.
You're ahead.
Yeah. Because you believing that you can unstick yourself is the most important thing. You really have to believe that you can. And I know that sounds cheesy, but it really changes everything when you get to the mindset that you have control of yourself and that you have the ability to plot a course and to stick to that course. Because really you do.
Yeah.
It's the one thing you do have control over is yourself.
That's been a fun realization for us.
It has been, because all of this, as much as we talk about the slog and whatever, I sleep better. I'm happier. I respect myself. And things, I'm not where I want to be. It's a long climb to where I want to be. But I am a little bit closer every day. There's those little victories all along the way.
I have a lot less anxiety because I know what my next step is.
Yeah. And I know if this one doesn't work, I know what the next step after that is. Mm-hmm. And it helps. It's still hard work. But here's the thing. Even if you're stuck, you're probably working real hard anyways. It's not easy. The mental energy that goes into being stressed and feeling trapped and all of that, that's hard work. Your chances are you're working hard anyways. Chances are you already feel exhausted if you're feeling trapped. So yes, this is hard, but I would argue that it's not nearly as hard as staying trapped. Staying trapped is much harder. It's definitely more miserable.
It is. It's no way to live feeling like that.
No.
And I don't know. Maybe I'll get sick of the DN thing. I don't feel particularly trapped by this, but I do know that I have a newfound confidence that I can really do whatever the hell I want to.
Yeah.
And so what do I want to do? For now, it's what I'm doing.
Right.
But when I get bored of that, or if it no longer serves me, then I'll figure out something else. But I am confident that I'll be able to get there.
Yeah, and I'm confident that I'll know when I get to that point because I'm constantly checking in with myself now. Is this what I want? Is this serving me? With everything in my life, all of my decisions are much more intentional.
I love seeing the results of it too.
Me too.
It sucks that you have to buy new clothes so often.
I know, but like
falling off of you.
Right. But it's cool. I really like it. It's a lot of fun. I've got a ways to go with this weight loss thing, but I've never lost this much weight. And it's pretty dramatic, actually.
Mm-hmm. You look great.
Thanks, girl.
Selfies on fleek.
Yeah, girl. You look great, too.
Thank you. Working on it. Trying to get into that gold lame dress for yacht prom. You know?
It's all about the gold lame.
I need more planking.
It's going to be great.
Side planks. Raised lift planks.
Do you want to go do some of that right now?
Go to plank hell. Let's go.
It's going to be great. You're going to love it.
Treat myself to some extra crunches tonight, you know?
Oh, girl, get wild.
Bicycle crunches. Yeah.
Yes.
Indulge. I think we did it.
We did it. This has been another episode of the Workationing Podcast. If you like what you've heard here, please consider donating at patreon.com/workationing. That's patreon.com. All proceeds will go towards funding our bucket list items.
To keep up with us in real time, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, all at Workationing. Or on our website at, you guessed it, workationing.com. That's workationing.com. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode.